You probably didn't know this, but after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine suddenly became the third largest nuclear power in the world, right behind the United States and Russia. 1,900 nuclear warheads, 176 intercontinental ballistic missiles, 44 strategic bombers, all of it on Ukrainian soil. In 1994, Ukraine signed the Budapest Memorandum, agreeing to give up its entire nuclear arsenal. In return, security guarantees from the US, from the UK, and from Russia. By 1996, Ukraine had handed over every last warhead to Russia. From nuclear superpower to zero. That's right. 0 nuclear weapons remained. In exchange, Ukraine received about $1 billion in US aid and technical support to dismantle silos, missiles, and command systems. But here's where it gets dark. In 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, none of the countries that signed the Budapest Memorandum stepped in militarily. Not one. The full disarmament process took over 15 years. The last facility was shut down in the early 2000s. And yet Ukraine was just one step away from building it all back. The scientists were still there. The know-how never disappeared. Then came 2022, a full-scale invasion. Cities bombed, millions displaced. And now the question is louder than ever. Was giving up those 1,900 warheads a historic mistake? We have set up an artificial intelligence to explore the question of whether social media is ultimately harmful to society. Today, we will have a structured debate involving two sides. One arguing that social media poses serious risks to mental health, democracy, and social cohesion, and one defending it as a powerful tool for connection, expression, and positive change. Here's how our debate will proceed. Opening statements. Argument development, rebuttals, questions, and answers. Don't skip ahead, watch the entire exchange and decide for yourself in the comments who made the stronger argument. If you're interested in the topic of debates, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and take part in the subscriber-only poll to help determine the winner.
Yes, it was a historic mistake. Opening statement. 1,500 Chars Ukraine's decision in 1994 to surrender its nuclear weapons under the Budapest Memorandum was undoubtedly a historic mistake. At that time, Ukraine held approximately 1,900 nuclear warheads, positioning itself as the third largest nuclear power globally. Despite receiving assurances from the United States, United Kingdom, and Russia, these diplomatic promises proved insufficient when tested. The stark evidence lies in the 2014 annexation of Crimea and the subsequent full-scale invasion in 2022, demonstrating Ukraine's severe vulnerability without nuclear deterrence. By relinquishing its nuclear capabilities, Ukraine unintentionally compromised its own sovereignty and territorial integrity. The reliance solely on international assurances, without tangible military strength to back them, exposed Ukraine to external aggression and significantly weakened its geopolitical standing. The historic error of trading a guaranteed security deterrent for uncertain diplomatic promises continues to have catastrophic implications for Ukraine's national security and regional stability today.
Ukraine's 1994 decision to relinquish its nuclear arsenal under the Budapest Memorandum was strategically prudent, diplomatically wise, and ethically commendable. During that period, Ukraine faced significant internal political instability, economic distress, and intense international pressure favoring nuclear disarmament. Retaining nuclear weapons would have isolated Ukraine diplomatically, impeded crucial international partnerships, and exacerbated its economic hardships. By voluntarily giving up its nuclear capabilities, Ukraine secured vital international support, bolstered its reputation as a responsible global actor, and aligned itself with principles of global nonproliferation and peace. Although Ukraine later faced severe challenges, particularly the aggression from Russia, its non-nuclear status attracted substantial international solidarity and assistance. This unprecedented global support underscores the broader strategic and moral correctness of Ukraine's historic decision to disarm, illustrating the significance and lasting impact of choosing diplomacy and cooperation over nuclear deterrence.
The decision to relinquish nuclear weapons drastically reduced Ukraine's ability to defend itself and deter foreign aggression. Nuclear weapons serve as powerful deterrents precisely because of their devastating potential. Nations that possess them command significant respect and caution from potential adversaries. Historical evidence demonstrates that nuclear-armed states are rarely subjected to direct military invasions, given the inherent risks associated with nuclear conflict. Thus, retaining even a modest nuclear capability would have provided Ukraine a robust protective shield, significantly lowering the likelihood of the aggressive acts it subsequently faced from Russia. Further, diplomatic assurances given to Ukraine under the Budapest Memorandum were notably lacking in enforcement mechanisms. Although the signatory countries pledged to uphold Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, when these assurances were tested by Russia's aggressive actions, international responses were insufficient. Sanctions, diplomatic protests, and limited economic pressure failed to deter Russian advances effectively. Ukraine found itself isolated and vulnerable, highlighting a fundamental flaw. Diplomatic promises, without the backing of military strength or binding enforcement mechanisms, are unreliable safeguards of national security. Additionally, the relinquishment of nuclear weapons diminished Ukraine's international standing and negotiating power significantly. Nuclear capabilities confer substantial leverage in international relations, enabling countries to influence global security frameworks effectively and secure favorable diplomatic and economic terms. Without nuclear deterrence, Ukraine was forced into weaker negotiating positions, reducing its strategic importance and diplomatic clout. Finally, Ukraine's disarmament sent a troubling signal globally about the consequences of voluntary nuclear disarmament. Observing Ukraine's subsequent vulnerability, other nations contemplating disarmament may now reconsider, potentially leading to global proliferation rather than the intended reduction of nuclear arsenals. Thus, Ukraine's decision not only jeopardized its own security, but also had broader negative implications for international security and global nuclear non-proliferation efforts.
Ukraine's voluntary disarmament of nuclear weapons was justified strategically, economically, and morally. Strategically, Ukraine's retention of nuclear weapons would have severely undermined its diplomatic relations and international integration at a critical post-Cold War juncture. The international community, heavily invested in nuclear non-proliferation efforts, strongly advocated for disarmament. Refusing to disarm would have isolated Ukraine, cutting off essential diplomatic ties, limiting access to international markets, and hindering crucial financial assistance needed for economic recovery and stability. Economically, maintaining a nuclear arsenal would have imposed a heavy financial burden on Ukraine. The costs associated with the secure storage, maintenance, and modernization of nuclear weapons and delivery systems would have been immense. At a time when Ukraine grappled with significant economic challenges and sought foreign investment and international economic assistance, diverting scarce resources to sustain a nuclear arsenal would have been impractical and detrimental to national development. Moreover, nuclear proliferation inherently escalates regional tensions, heightening the risk of catastrophic military conflicts. Had Ukraine retained nuclear capabilities, it would have likely intensified hostility and increased military confrontation risks with neighboring states, especially Russia. Ukraine's disarmament contributed positively to regional stability, reduced nuclear tensions, and aligned with global nuclear non-proliferation goals. Finally, from an ethical perspective, disarmament aligns with broader humanitarian principles aimed at reducing the existential threats posed by nuclear arsenals. Ukraine's decision reinforced its commitment to international peace and security, elevating its moral standing and securing global empathy and solidarity in times of crisis. The substantial international support and aid provided during recent conflicts illustrate the tangible benefits derived from Ukraine's responsible and principled stance on nuclear disarmament.
Advocates for Ukraine's disarmament argue primarily from economic and diplomatic perspectives, suggesting nuclear weapons would burden Ukraine financially and diplomatically isolate it. However, this viewpoint neglects critical strategic realities. The perceived economic burden of maintaining nuclear arms is significantly outweighed by the costs Ukraine has suffered due to invasions and territorial losses, which are exponentially higher. Financial considerations pale against the devastating human, economic, and territorial damage resulting from a lack of credible defense. Diplomatically, nuclear capabilities historically do not isolate, but rather elevate a nation's global standing, affording it enhanced diplomatic leverage and security assurances. Thus, arguments suggesting that Ukraine benefited diplomatically by disarming fail under scrutiny, particularly in light of subsequent territorial aggression.
Critics argue Ukraine's surrender of nuclear weapons made it vulnerable to external aggression, primarily highlighting the invasion of Crimea and subsequent military conflicts. While understandable, this viewpoint overlooks essential nuances. Nuclear capabilities alone do not guarantee absolute protection against conventional warfare or hybrid threats, as evidenced by conflicts involving nuclear states elsewhere. Furthermore, had Ukraine retained nuclear weapons, regional tensions would likely have escalated dangerously, potentially triggering more severe conflicts or even nuclear confrontations. The international diplomatic, economic, and security support Ukraine has received since disarming demonstrates that a robust, multilateral response can effectively deter and mitigate aggression without nuclear deterrence. Ultimately, diplomatic alliances, international law enforcement, and collective security frameworks provide more sustainable and ethically responsible means to safeguard national sovereignty and regional stability.
Moderator's question. Given historical events, how can future international agreements better ensure security for countries that choose disarmament?
Future agreements must include legally binding security commitments, clearly defined military support clauses, and enforceable mechanisms that guarantee immediate international response. Diplomatic promises alone are insufficient. Tangible guarantees backed by concrete enforcement are crucial.
Enhancing international laws, establishing regular compliance monitoring mechanisms, building strong multilateral alliances, and ensuring explicit economic and security support frameworks will significantly strengthen the security of countries opting for disarmament. Robust diplomatic support and reliable economic incentives will effectively deter potential aggressors.
Thanks for watching. Now it's your turn. Let us know in the comments who you think won this debate. Don't forget to cast your vote and tell us why. And if you enjoyed this content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More debates are coming your way. See you next time.